Okay, hey, welcome back. I'd like you to meet someone really special and plugged into the race scene. Meet Spencer Pigot, IndyCar driver for Ed Carpenter Racing and Juncos Racing. Spencer, thanks so much for joining us on the show today.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me.
You're more than welcome. Hey, Spencer Pigot qualified on for the 101st running of the Indianapolis 500 this weekend, and he'll be starting 29th in car number 11 with Juncos Racing. Now, so tell us how you joined up with Juncos.
Yeah, it was a good story. I mean, Juncos Racing, this is their first ever IndyCar race, so it's a very unique experience for them. But the deal with them kind of came together really quick. Pretty much the beginning of May is when it was all finalized, and usually that's not how it happens. You want to have a lot of time to kind of prepare for the race, which they've had on the cars. But for me to start working with them, it all kind of happened pretty late, and especially as I was racing for Ed Carpenter on the Grand Prix here in Indy. So, trying to toss two teams around and focus on everything because they're both extremely important races. So it's been a lot going on, but my relationship with Juncos Racing actually dates back all the way to the very beginning of my racing career, back when I was 10, 11 years old, racing for them in go-karts and all around Florida.
So you've known them that long. That's fantastic, and they've seen you move through your career. And are most of the same people still with Juncos?
There's quite a few, yeah. I mean, it's a real family team. It's Ricardo Juncos, his wife Danielle, and his brother Ale, who have been there from the start. And Ricardo came over from Argentina with literally nothing, and he raced back in Argentina and realized that it wasn't going to come together for him to be a professional driver with the goal, like we all have, of being an IndyCar or Formula One. So came to America, he started working on go-karts and started his own go-kart team in Miami. And I'm from Orlando, so most of the karting in Florida was happening down south. So we'd always be driving down to Miami to go racing, and got hooked up with Ricardo and drove for him. I don't know, I was about 10 to 12 years old, and won a lot of races, a lot of national championships together. And then our paths kind of separated a little bit as I went into car racing through the junior formula, Skip Barber, USF 2000, and his path led him to car racing as well. He began a Pro Mazda team, which is the kind of the second level of the ladder system called the Mazda Road to Indy that leads the IndyCar. So he was doing that. I was doing USF 2000, and when I was able to jump up to Pro Mazda my second year in that championship, we joined forces again, and it was like nothing had ever changed. I mean, we won right away. We won that Pro Mazda championship in 2014. Next year, moved up to Indy Lights as rookies. We won that championship, and now here we are at the Indy 500. So it's been a really cool thing to watch their progression, and to be a part of it in different levels has been really special.
Absolutely. So you've been able to go on the same tracks. So there
There we go. Starting already.
All right. That's a really cool story, and on top of that, I mean, that's almost an American dream, right? And it is. I mean, be able to come into this country and be able to, with nothing, and be able to go all the way through the professional driving circuit. Now, you've got a great story as well. So you're from Orlando. When did you first become interested in racing?
Well, I first became interested in racing forever. I mean, my dad used to race, so he was always into it, and always every weekend watching IndyCar, Formula One, sports cars, motocross. I actually started racing dirt bikes first when I was about 5 years old, and then raced bicycles, BMX bikes, and then finally got a go-kart when I was about 8. So, racing's always been a part of my life, and I've just loved it ever since. I've played other sports. Soccer is my other favorite sport, but still, nothing really compares to racing and the speed and the adrenaline you get. Yep. Starting a race, even go-karting, even though you're maybe only going 70 miles an hour, still, there's 30, 40 go-karts all trying to win the race, and it's no different now. We're just going a little bit faster.
Okay, hold on a second, Spencer. I'm literally hearing your entire life here, and I've got 4 kids, and the youngest is 6 years old. If I actually put him on a dirt bike right now, oh my gosh, well, he'd probably tear it up. But my 17-year-old doesn't even want to drive right now. By the time you were 17, what were you racing?
17. I was racing USF 2000.
And how fast were you going?
About 130 or so. So, but it's all relative, right? I mean, there's guys that I watch that I think are absolutely nuts. These motocross riders and MotoGP. And I think those guys are crazy, and they think the same of us, but we don't really think anything of it. So it's just, I guess it's all kind of what you're.
So do you have to have
right?
a driver's license to get into the Mazda Series, or do they can they be 15, 14 years old?
Oh yeah, there's kids in there that are 14 years old racing USF 2000, and yeah, there's no.
So do they have
they go through a licensing
test?
system?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean they don't have a written test, or they don't necessarily be observed at a controlled environment. Basically, you kind of submit your resume, submit what you've done, karting, whatever Formula car racing you've done, and it goes off to the FIA, which is the global governing body, basically of motorsports, and they can either approve or deny you. Pretty much everyone gets approved. I mean, there's some guys out there that might not.
Are completely crazy.
Exactly. So,
for the good
lack
of the cause.
better words, yeah, it's it pretty lax.
Well, that's amazing. I mean,
there.
and we're certainly familiar with. We've had a strong relationship with Sarah Fisher Racing for a while, and we tracked her career for a long time in karting and go-karts. It's just amazing seeing youth grow up in that sport, because the dexterity and the focus and the attention, and I mean, there's so many things that they have to pay attention to at that young age. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's a very unique sport, and in a lot of ways, but in some ways, people don't realize it's just like every other sport. You start playing basketball or soccer or whatever when you're young, and
right.
You play through your whole life to try and be good enough to be a professional. So it's the same in racing. You start racing go-karts. Some people at 4 or 5 years old, and they're called kid carts. They're tiny little things that go maybe 45, 50 miles an hour, and these kids, it looks like they're playing the pee-wee football with the helmets twice as big as their body. So, same thing. You grow up with it, you start racing, you gradually get into bigger and faster go-karts, and then you have to kind of start all over again once you get to the age of moving into car racing. And they just get bigger and faster and more competition, and just like the NFL or anything else. So it's in many ways it's unique, because it's not just you and your teammates playing. There's all these different circumstances and all these different things that can happen.
Right.
With this mechanical machine, things can break that are out of your control, and that can kind of ruin everything. So it's it's what makes it so interesting.
But that's really important is your relationship to the team that works on that car, and I'm very well aware that there's a huge bond that happens with the racing teams. Is that let alone the fact that they're double checking everything, but you've got to trust every mechanic that's behind that, because if you're going as fast as you're going, right, 222, 228 miles an hour, right, it's a huge factor, and you've got to have. You're giving your trust completely to that team that's got your back there, right?
Yeah, you are. They're obviously doing their best, but mistakes do happen, and you just have to trust that they're doing everything they can to make sure that the car is perfect. Going those speeds, everything's got to be looked over twice. Everything's got to be tight. Everything's got to be lubricated that needs lubrication, and it's very important to have good guys, which I've been lucky to have pretty much my whole career. I've always had really good mechanics, and that's the people that are in control of you, basically. They look over everything, they make sure everything's right, and if it's not, they'll stay up all night. After the crash we had on Friday, the guys are literally there all night repairing the car to have it back in time to qualify on Saturday. So they literally want to win as bad as we do.
Absolutely.
They're super competitive. They work way too hard for the amount of recognition and appreciation they get. It's amazing what these guys do for racing, because they're all racers, right? They all love it, and it's their way of being involved.
Oh, very cool. And that's right. You did have a crash on Friday, and we talked about it before this show, and it was just you're going pretty darn fast, 222 miles an hour, and you were able. It got away from you, right?
Yeah, so basically what happened is, we're getting ready for qualifying.
Right.
It was on Friday, Fast Friday, where we get extra horsepower. So for Friday, Saturday, Sunday of the Indy 500, getting ready for qualifying, you get extra horsepower to go faster for qualifying speeds, kind of increase the show, increase the excitement. And, we were really actually wasn't even going for a fast lap. 222 is not very fast really when you're getting ready for qualifying. We'd been doing 227s or so, and we went out on old tires with little downforce because the way you get speed out of the car is you take the downforce away. So you make the wings less efficient, basically. So you go through the air faster, but there's less force pushing you into the road, so you have less grip.
Right.
And we just kind of underestimated the lack of grip in the old tires, and that was enough to just cross that super fine line of being in control and being out of control. So, literally it spun before I even knew what was happening, and it was really unfortunate because the guys, like I said, had to spend a lot of time getting the car fixed, and this whole Indy 500 is basically a carbon copy of my last one so far, because last year, my rookie year, I had a flat tire going into turn one, spun and crashed. And I qualified in exactly the same spot this year as I did last year. So, unfortunately, everything's going the same.
Oh my gosh!
So
hopefully the race goes better. But
so when when you're getting in an accident, what do you do as a driver? Do you just brace for impact and just let it happen, or do you try to steer it so you hit a? You were talking about before about it was just the angle that Sebastian Bourdais hit the wall that got him injured for the race. What do you do as a driver to?
Right.
Do you tighten up or do you go loose?
Well, at Indy, there's not much time to do anything, honestly. I mean, you're going so fast, and the track's fairly narrow, so by the time you realize you're backwards within, thousandths of a second almost, you're splattering against the wall. So it's very difficult to brace or to kind of do anything to prevent the accident, because if you get even slightly out of control, there's no room for error.
Right.
I mean, you're going to crash. So it's just, in Sebastian's case, he was doing everything he could to save the slide, and it hooked him back into the wall at a really bad angle, which is a real shame because he was flying. I mean, he was probably going to be on pole this weekend, but that's what it is. I mean, it's just you're flirting with that fine line of brilliance and, just excitement and being able to put it all together and crashing the car. So basically the only thing you can do is hopefully let go of the steering wheel, because that's where a lot of little injuries come from, is the wheel gets whipped out of your hands when your front wheels hit the wall or hit something. So that's basically all you can do is get your hands off the wheel and just relax if you can. I mean, the more tense you are, the more likely you are to get injured. But just try and get your hands off the wheel and hope it doesn't hurt too bad.
Oh man.
I just know from I took one semester of karate in college, but like when you get punched, you tighten up your gut.
Yeah, right.
So I wasn't sure if it was like something like that you tightened up to help.
For sure, you probably do a little bit.
Or,
it's there's not much space to move, which is the idea. Your head's very locked in.
Yeah.
With all this special padding and foam around your head to kind of absorb any impact. And the seat takes 2 days to make these seats because they're all custom formed to our body. It's this kind of beaded foam, and it hardens as you sit, and you have to sit in the car for an hour or 2 hours to make sure it forms and molds just to your body. So there's no room to move in there. And we've got a Hans device, which kind of prevents the head from going forward too much, and IndyCar has done a great job making the cars as safe as possible.
Yeah, those pods around you. I mean, the pocket you're in is layers upon layers of give that will break away before it actually gets in and harms you, right?
Yeah, the more parts that are flying off the car, as crazy as it sounds, is the better, because that absorbs a lot of the energy and absorbs the impact. So it looks a bit more spectacular, but it's actually kind of better for the driver, because that's kind of taking the force away from his body and putting it on the car.
Yep. Well, for listeners who don't know, and we covered it earlier, Spencer was the 2014 Pro Mazda champion and the 2015 Indy Lights champion, and that earned him a spot in the 100th running of the Indy 500. That's last year's race. So, what was it like to get into that car for the first time at IMS?
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, this is the dream. This is what I've wanted to do forever, and everyone racing go-karts from the age of 8 or 9 years old wants to be in the Indy 500. So for it all to come together was, something that obviously we'd always hoped for, but, never really knew it was going to happen or not, because it's so tough to get into IndyCar, and it takes so many people and so much funding and sponsors to get there that when it all came together, it was a pretty, surreal moment for me, for my family have worked so hard to help me in any way they can, but it was great. It's the 100th running as well. To be a rookie in that race was really neat. I mean, there's just so many people there, and not just on race day, but throughout the whole month. Through Gasoline Alley, people everywhere.
Yep.
All the events around town were just filled with energy. Everyone was excited, and I think a lot of that is carried over to this year as well. I think it got a lot of people excited again about the race. Maybe people that hadn't been in a few years decided to come back out for the 500 for the 100th running, and ticket sales are up again this year. So it's going to be, I think, really good again. And being the starting grid of the 100th running and seeing all those people was amazing. But once the green flag drops, then it all kind of goes out the window, and you've got too much other stuff to worry about and focus on than thinking about the occasion.
So, what is that ratio of the drivers that aspire to get to IndyCar to the ones that actually succeed there? Any idea how many don't make it to that level?
Most of them. I mean, there's only 33 people in the Indy 500, and there's hundreds of people racing go-karts and racing other car series and that have tried to get here and not done it, or maybe gotten here and done one race and that was it. So it's kind of hard to put a number on it, but the majority of people, unfortunately, that might be just as talented as guys that are running at the front of IndyCar races, everything has to fall right into place to get there. So it's, for the ones that do make it, we're all very fortunate, and I think a lot of us realize that we're very lucky and things just kind of went just right for us. But, I always try to give advice and help any young kids that are coming up to try and make it up as well, because I know how hard it is and how much work it takes from not only you, but, it takes a whole team of people, let alone on the race team, to make it happen.
Yeah, we were talking before air about the reality of there's so many drivers that are incredible drivers, but the money wasn't there to unlock that next level and that next level. So sponsorships and the hunt for sponsorships is incredibly challenging as you're going up the ranks, right? And it's tough. You have a unique story yourself. Is that in some scenarios there's a lot of drivers that come from money, right? And that's a whole nother echelon of I shouldn't say echelon, a whole nother sector of driving, right? Is that there's not nearly as much of a worry of how it's going to be funded, right? But you're coming from an entire background where that wasn't there. So literally the hunt to be able to get the car taken care of, get the team paid, right, has been ever present every year that you've been doing racing.
Yeah, it has, and that's something that is very unique to motor racing, I think. I mean, there's a lot of guys that are extremely talented, like you said, that have won a lot of races, and if they were in, soccer or college football, some of the best in the country, they would be, drafted into the NFL or whatever, and be a paid professional athlete right from the get-go. And it's not like that in racing. You basically have to pay to do this all the way up until IndyCar, and there's even people paying to do it in IndyCar as well. So that's another aspect that, like you said, is very challenging, and it really is a unique thing that we have here in America. To get up to IndyCar, there's a system called the Mazda Road to Indy, which is the feeder system, like we were talking about, USF 2000, Pro Mazda, Indy Lights, and then hopefully into IndyCar. And what Mazda provide is a scholarship to the champion. So if you win USF 2000 championship, you get a scholarship of about $300,000 to move up to Pro Mazda.
Oh, cool.
Which pretty much covers the whole ride, because these teams in the lower levels,
For that
this
first
is
year.
what they for the 1 year. This is what they do to feed their family and to make a living. So
Right.
they don't have, like Penske. Obviously, he's got this massive corporation, and these guys, this is what they do for a living. So they have to make money, and they rely on the drivers to bring that money to go racing. So again, if you win the Pro Mazda championship, you get a scholarship to go into Indy Lights, and if you win Indy Lights, you get some money to go into IndyCar. So that's something very unique to motorsports worldwide. I mean, there's nothing like that in Europe
Right.
or anywhere. So that's something that I was very fortunate enough to take advantage of and win some scholarships. And I was lucky that it was all going towards IndyCar, because that's what I wanted to do. So it really worked out well for me. But like you said, not everyone can win the championship every year, and I certainly didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So then you have to go out and find sponsorship or investors or something. You have to be creative sometimes, and the problem is that there's not a whole lot of commercial value for USF 2000,
Right.
because they're not on TV. They're not, they're racing at the big events, but you're racing in the mornings, 9 a.m. No one's there. So it's very difficult. You have to be very lucky a lot of times, and I kind of was able to fund it based off guys that just really loved racing, that had been successful in their business life, that wanted to help a young American driver. So that was really the key to me progressing and moving on up. But a lot of guys stall out, if they don't win that scholarship.
Yep.
And it can take just a wheel being loose or some $10 screw
Yep.
pulling out, and that
That's
can
it.
just destroy one race, which can lead to losing the championship. So it's
Everything's hinged on the team, the mechanics.
It is. Yep.
All the money getting to that point in time, but it's precarious. It's not just you can rely upon yourself and your endurance. I mean, in sports, you've got a lot of control over what you can do, but there's so many different variables in the equation.
There
right?
are, and it happens at every level. I mean, 2 weeks ago at the Indy Grand Prix, we were having a great race. We didn't qualify great, started 16th or something, but within the first 20 laps, I'd made my way up to 6th and right on the gearbox of 5th. So we're having a great race. We come in for our first pit stops. The guys do a great job, and then we had a little electrical issue that caused the car to stall. So engine stopped, had to pull it back, restart it, lost a ton of time, and
Right.
Was still able to finish 9th, but that's something that could have been a 3rd or a 4th, which is, would have been way better, obviously, and it just didn't happen, and not for anyone's lack of effort or for anyone's lack of talent.
Right.
It just shit happens, right?
Yeah.
And, you
It
can't
does.
control it.
Yep. And that's the thing, is that I'm certain that in the culture of racers and the culture of racing, that concept, shit happens, has to be embraced, because you can't flog yourself. You just got to say, all right, learn from it, move on, right?
Exactly. I mean, you just sometimes it's not your day, and you just have to know that you did your best. And I know that I could have finished in the top 5, which is nice, but it's also a little more frustrating.
Yeah.
Even a 9th isn't too bad, but at least we finished 9th knowing we could have been higher up. It's not like we finished 9th by a lucky pit stop or a
Right.
strategy or something. So
You were killing it.
it's so you can either look at it as that's a positive, or man, that's even more frustrating. But we've got a lot more races, and I think we're gonna have some good finishes. So we'll just keep plugging away.
Well, speaking to the sponsors that got you through these years, you want to give a shout out to anybody, any organizations that have been making sure that you have what you need to be successful?
Yeah, well, there's an awful lot, but recently, and maybe something more Indianapolis specific, is Rising Star Racing, who
Sure.
Art Wilmus is a local businessman here downtown Indy, and he's always been a race fan. He's been to the 500 for years and years, and just recently decided that he wanted to get more involved in racing and help out some young American drivers. So I was one of 3 guys, including Joseph Newgarden and Neil Alberico, is like the original Rising Star Racing class or whatever you want to call it. And
Mhm.
so he was very instrumental in me continuing into IndyCar and doing my first season of IndyCar last year with Carpenter Racing. So, that's
and all the other two racers are also All-American, right?
yeah, absolutely. Joseph's now with Team Penske and Neil's in Indy Lights. So
Yep.
the goal of this is to help guys that don't have the big family money or an uncle or whatever,
Right.
that are talented to keep moving up the ladder. So it's a very unique system, and obviously very lucky to be a part of it.
Cool.
And then this year at the Indy 500, we've got Oceanfront Recovery on the car. So just excited to be with them, and a lot of little people that too many to mention that have helped me across my career.
Oh, that's fantastic, yeah, and you can't go through everybody, but at the same time, there's greatness behind you, and a lot of times you can't see the sponsorships that are moving you, but they truly are believing in you, and you're here, because of that group of people. So that's fantastic. So I got to ask you here to wrap up, what does it feel like going 230 miles an hour?
Yeah, I get asked that question a lot, and it's kind of hard to explain. Last year was my first time in an IndyCar around the Speedway, and as a rookie, you have to go through something called ROP, a rookie orientation practice, where they basically just make sure you can handle the speeds. You have to do 10 laps between 205 and 210, 10 laps between 210, 215, and then 10 laps over 215 before they sign off on you that you're allowed to compete in the Indy 500. So,
Right.
The first segment, 205 to 210, I was like, man, this feels pretty damn fast already. And
Right.
knowing that that's slow. I mean, if you're going 205, you're going to get black flag basically because it's unsafe, the closing speeds. So, it's not like going from 25 to 35 miles an hour on the street. Every mile an hour or two at that speed just feels exponentially faster, and you kind of get used to it, but still, every time especially when Fast Friday comes around, they bump the horsepower up, and you go into turn one for the first time, and you got way more shift lights on. You can hear the engine screaming even louder, and you feel that you're going faster, and you have to try and keep it flat through turn one, and
Right.
it definitely gets your attention, and it's until not everyone obviously can experience it, but it's kind of hard to explain, and at the same time you kind of get used to it, and then it all becomes kind of relative, and it never really feels super fast until something goes wrong. I mean, once you're going backwards, then it feels really fast.
I've heard it likened to being in the jet plane cockpit. I mean, that type of movement and that type of focus that you have, you can't see. I mean, not that you get tunnel vision, but I mean, you have a very select number of things that you can even focus on. Everything is just moving so fast that you can only lock in on a few things, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and you have to prioritize what you want to focus on. I mean, there's no room in the cockpit to do much at all. I mean, it's very small. It's trying to be as efficient as possible through the air. So in that way, it's very similar to an airplane, I would imagine. But at the same time, now you're racing with all these cars, and you have to be looking at them, seeing what they're doing, trying to figure out how to approach the next corner, where to place your car, because it's so reliant, these cars, on airflow over the wings to get grip. That's basically where 90% of our grip comes from, is from downforce. So if you're falling behind the car in front of you, then all that air, the weight kind of goes above your car, and now you've got no air basically over your
Pushing
wings.
down,
So you're sliding all over the place. So you're constantly trying to stick a wing out here, stick a wing out there, just to get some airflow. And when there's 33 cars on the track and you're mid-pack or, starting where I am, there's really nothing. So
you have no way to break away.
No grip. It feels, it doesn't feel comfortable at all. I mean, it's fun in a way, but in a lot of ways, it's not really that fun because you're going so fast and you know that any little mistake is going to not be good.
Right.
Going to end badly. And it's just not a comfortable feeling because when you're in clean air, like qualifying, even though you're on light downforce,
right,
you feel pretty planted most of the time. But when you have all these cars, all this, we call it dirty air, all the wakes coming off the cars in front, it's it's not comfortable. It doesn't feel good. It's, you know.
And it's constantly varying, so you really can't count on it.
Yeah, exactly. It's different every corner, every lap,
Wow.
and you have to do it for 200 laps. So it's, you know, we're not relaxing out there. That's for sure.
Well, that's an experience. To wrap up, what did you learn from last year's race in preparation for this year's race?
Kind of what I was just talking about, you know, running in that dirty air. There's a lot of, you know, kind of tricks you can do to try and find a little bit more grip. So, you know, last year all that was new to me, so I came in, you know, trying to figure a lot of that out. So this year I come back and I kind of have a head start on where I was and definitely feel a lot more comfortable in that dirty air and in traffic. And, you know, already this year in practice, we've been, you know, passing a lot more cars than I did last year and just been a lot racier. So, you know, just having that next level of comfort in a very uncomfortable situation is going to be important, I think.
Oh, fantastic. So the team's going to be ready for Sunday?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, we're on track again today, this afternoon, and then we have a few days off. So it's going to be nice for them to get some rest and really focus on preparing the car, and they need some rest. They've been working really hard.
So what do you work on for Monday and Tuesday, like the first part of the week? What do you focus on?
So now it's all race running, you know, running in that traffic, running behind cars, because that's what the race is like, as you know, for 200 laps. So we'll go out and we'll try and find a lot of other cars to run with and make some changes here and there, trying to make it a little bit better, a little bit more comfortable. And, you know, practice pit stops and do all that stuff so the guys can get warmed up, because in the race, I think there's 7 or 8 pit stops,
right,
and they can be extremely important to the outcome. So get them warmed up on that, and then they'll just double check everything, you know, check all the nuts and bolts, make sure everything's nice and clean and shiny for all the pictures on Sunday.
So which is it more? Is it more physically draining or mentally draining when you're racing that?
At this specific track, it's definitely more mental. The thing that makes IndyCar racing very physical is that there's no power steering, and what makes the steering heavy is the downforce. So at a track like this, where you're really focusing on straight line speed a lot of times, you have very little downforce. You know, we might have 2,000 pounds of downforce here at Indy, but on a road and street course, we'll have almost 6,000 pounds of downforce pushing down on the car. So that's what really makes the steering weight heavy. And, you know, our next race is in Detroit, which is the bumpiest place I've ever been to. So you're bumping around, you're moving around, and it's heavy. So stuff like that is really physical. But, you know, this is a very long race, so it does get a little tiring towards the end, and you can kind of cramp up because you're basically flat for most of the time, so your leg gets tired. But physically, it's not one of the harder races, but it's very mentally draining.
Speaking of pressure, right? We saw that you threw the first pitch at a Reds game recently. So what's more nerve-wracking? Is it the race or throwing a pitch at a Reds game?
They're pretty similar, actually. Yeah, it was cool, though. Yeah, I was supposed to actually throw the first pitch at a Cubs game last year, but it got rained out. So this is I know, it would have been really neat. We got up there, I got the jersey, got the ball, was on the field, and then 10 minutes before I was supposed to throw it, it started downpouring. So this year I got to go over to Cincinnati and throw a pitch, and it was definitely, you know, I didn't warm up. I hadn't thrown a baseball in ages. It was a little high, but at least I got it there, and it was somewhat accurate. But yeah, definitely when I was like, oh, it's going to be no problem. And then when you get up to the mound and it's a little further away than you think, and there's a lot of people watching you, so you definitely get a few butterflies.
Absolutely. All right, so last question here. When you're not in an Indy car, what car or cars do you drive?
Well, I drive a Chevy Tahoe. I don't actually own a car. It's a company car that they let us drive around in, so I actually don't even own a car. But yeah, I've had a couple cars in the past. I had a Mazda. It was my first car, a Mazda Speed 3, then a 3 Series BMW, and now just driving a Tahoe.
Does it really irritate you when you're in traffic?
Sometimes.
And some idiot drivers that are in front of you?
I really get annoyed with slow people in the left lane, which I'm sure everyone does.
Yeah.
You know, people not using
even
their
more
blinker.
So, right?
Yeah, it's actually not a bad thing if they slow me down, because I've gotten too many tickets already.
Yeah.
So, you know, even though I get annoyed, sometimes like, all right, well, at least I won't get a ticket.
Yeah. It's like a natural restriction.
It is, yeah.
Well, fantastic, Spencer. We want to make sure that everybody knows where to find you on Twitter. Spencer at Spencer Pigot, Pigot. Facebook is Spencer-Pigot. Oh, we got a long list of numbers there. We got to fix that for you. Instagram at Spencer Pigot, and website spencerpigot.com. Any final words for people that maybe boys and girls that are aspiring to go into racing? Any thoughts about how to do it, and just some inspiration there?
Yeah, well, specifically here in Indianapolis, there's a great go-kart track about 30 minutes, I guess it's east, out in Newcastle, Indiana, which I've raced at since I was 10, 11 years old as well.
Wow.
It's a great place to go out and learn. There's a lot of really good people there. So if anyone out there interested in racing, I'd suggest going out there. They've got lots of go-karts you can rent, for all ages. And, also if you want a taste of karting, there's a lot of indoor karting places here in Indy on the north side. Fast Times and Sarah Fisher has got a new place over in Speedway. So I just encourage people to go out and try it. Obviously it's a sport that I love, and it's a little addicting. So if you do enjoy it, then just try your best and keep plugging away, because it's very difficult. It could get a little discouraging at times, but I think that the people that really are determined and continue to work hard at it will definitely get their chances.
It's very gratifying, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, thank you so much for your time, and wish you all the luck in the world on Sunday.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, and hope to see some of the listeners out there.
Absolutely.